Hello, thank you very much for joining us for this AoC podcast mini-series. So my name is Tom Moule, I'm a senior AI specialist at Jisc, and I'm joined today by Anthony Bravo, who is the Principal CEO at Basingstoke College of Technology, is also the Chair of the AoC Digital Reference Group and Vice Chair at UFI. To my right here we have Josh Smith, who is Head of Public Affairs at UFI. So we're talking today about AI and skills for the future. So I suppose the big question to kind of start getting our bearings as part of this conversation is, what is it that we should be doing to prepare students for a future where generative AI is becoming ever more pervasive?
Well, there's quite a lot. I would actually say, and the absolute basics is getting them exposed to the tools so as they actually have tried using those things. But once you've started to do that, I think you need to be looking at the actual ethics of using AI, because that is a real issue which a lot of people aren't aware of. And in our college, we've even given them an AI module they have to do, which one part of it actually includes a fake version of me speaking and a real version of me speaking. And they have to work out which one is which, because if you haven't met me, you may not know. And you'll never know necessarily what is actually online or what AI is actually producing nowadays. So using the tools as well in lessons is one of the things we're doing, so they are familiar and comfortable with using those tools. Guidance we've got to give them, and then obviously ideally if you can be using AI to improve employability by working with SMEs and things like that, but I can come on to that later. But it's ethics, it's an understanding of what needs to be done, and practice in using those tools, I think.
Fantastic, thank you, Anthony. And Josh, in terms of what support colleges might need to be in a good position to make sure students are getting that help to thrive in an AI world, what can be done there?
Yeah, I think there's lots that can be done, and I'll come back in a moment to some of those specific skills, because I think we can talk a lot about those digital skills, but also those soft skills that come along with it, being able to empathise, being resilient to the change that AI brings. We see it time and time again as an important feature. But colleges themselves, we are always encouraging more colleges to be experimental in their adoption and deployment of digital technology. So where they can and where they feel it is safe going about adopting digital technology, including AI tools. We think that colleges like Basingstoke are obviously amazing. Anthony does a brilliant job encouraging his staff to integrate digital tools into their teaching and the students' learning. And we think that more colleges should be trying to take that step with the leaders first, making a case for adoption, giving their staff the space to experiment safely, and generally encouraging the adoption and deployment of tools. And then also the staff CPD. Staff CPD is critical, obviously for learning technology more broadly, but AI presents a very specific challenge. It's fast moving, curriculums struggle to keep up, but making sure that staff have time to see what they can do with these tools, to understand the safety implications that Anthony's spoken about, but also to make sure that they can keep their skills relevant as they go through work.
Brilliant.
Can I just add to that, because that's a really brilliant point he's making, particularly about the skills. With skills, creativity and communication, these are the skills which AI is sort of pretending to have, but they're the human skills we're going to continuously need. Adaptability is really important, empathy as well, learners being able to use those skills. In our college, we've adopted someone else's criteria, we call it core skills, and those are around compassion, originality, responsibility, and empathy. And you actually need that more and more when you start looking at AI. And also put a sprinkle of emotional intelligence in there, because you don't actually need all those technical skills which people think you may actually need. And we're talking about using it in the college. One of the things we do in our college is we have what we call a free tick system before we let any student or member of staff get loose with it. And it has to pass the IT test to make sure it doesn't crash our systems. It has to pass the GDPR test to make sure it's not doing anything really bad. And it has to pass our technologist test, because our technologists are the people who test everything to see if it's of value to the teachers. So those skills and operating in a safe environment in a college are really important. And a wonderful example, Joshua, what you're talking about, in changing what's happening to teachers. We've got a member of staff who's legendary now, who's saving 5 hours a week in lesson preparation because of the use of AI and technology. So it is quite amazing.
The potential is transformative, isn't it? The Teachermatic might be what you're referring to. So this is AI lesson planning that UFI is very proud to support, and which has gone on and has taken over the FE sector. The power of some relatively simple artificial intelligence to dramatically reduce teacher workload is enormous. But what it requires is that leadership piece, that you've got to say adopting and experimenting with tools is important, and it requires the CPD, giving staff the chance to experiment with it. And then ultimately the giving, obviously not in the case of Teachermatic, but where it interacts with learners, making sure they have those essential skills.
I agree with you, and I think the thing that's really important is to have a trust of your staff. Be willing to try things. We've got this terrible expression, we say we're very promiscuous. We will try anything, but if it doesn't work, we don't feel bad about letting it go. And you mentioned Teachermatic. I don't want this to be an advert for different companies, but Teachermatic, SentryTech, Canva, they're all really good products which use things which genuinely make life better for teachers.
Yes.
Definitely, absolutely, definitely.
And it doesn't just have to be sort of the proprietary tools. There's lots of tools that come with it. In
Gemini.
And in Hull, we've worked with them to develop a translation tool that live translates lessons using Microsoft's PowerPoint's captioning tools. Absolutely transformative to ESOL engagement and retention, but really simple. Just allowing staff to experiment, test safely with what tools they might use, and it's a really transformative tool.
Well, all of that stuff you're talking about, especially like in ESOL where you're using the translations, a really good example. But what you're finding now is that in all the lesson preparation there's loads to be doing, you're getting personalised tutoring effectively for learners so they can work at the rate they want to work at, which is great. And I know certainly UFI have funded chatbot development, which my dream is that we UFI fund a chatbot for the FE sector, which all colleges can get access to and brand as their own. And that would make a massive difference to the workload and efficiency of colleges. So I'm saying that now, AoC, UFI, that's something I'd really love us to do.
I'll take it back.
Yep. But then, so even on the other levels, some universities are starting to use AI for suicide watch. So they're actually noting if learners are missing lessons and things like that, to notice those learners who are most at risk. So the applications are as wide as you can imagine. It's amazing, amazing.
Fantastic. So we mentioned the core skills as those key skills that students will need, with the argument being that it's not necessarily the technical skills that are going to be most important. Josh, what are your thoughts in terms of where those skills are that students, what those skills are that students need to develop? And perhaps you could touch on how staff might need to start developing their skill set in that regard as well, and how they can be supported to do so.
Yeah, I think you're entirely correct about that point around these skills aren't necessarily incredibly technical. We've partnered with Future.now. They're a digital skills charity and they've got their essential digital skills framework. We've been working with them as well to think about how AI skills, AI relevant skills might integrate into that. Not as a standalone piece, but as an integration into a set of skills that we all need to get on in work and life. And the critical thing to say about essential digital skills is that we're all as bad as each other with essential digital skills. It is doesn't matter how old, your social class, all of these different factors don't appear to have much of an impact on your essential digital skills. We're all about 50% of people can complete the 20 skills. So no matter what sort of subsection you take, improving those essential digital skills will be critical to supporting students and teachers with getting the skills they need to deploy the tools. Some of them are really basic safety skills, some of them are accessing the world kind of skills, and some of them are then doing those basic tasks that we all need to be able to complete, like using Word or using a bank app. And AI fits into that as part of it, but making sure we all have those essential digital skills will be critical.
Excellent. And is it just about having skills for the workforce? Is it also, because the point you were making about the ethics, the idea of these deepfakes, is it about having skills for life that we need to think about that are perhaps different or maybe are they not that different? Are they actually things that we're already starting to master? They're just in a slightly different form now.
I think they are some of the same skills, and I think of another product, body swaps, which
Yeah.
is a wonderful example where you learn things about your posture when you're in an interview situation. They've got wonderful little segments on microaggressions, and those sorts of things you can learn about in a really safe environment. So it is the same sort of skills, but what we're finding is AI is just either enhancing or making it easier or making some more vulnerable learners, giving them a level of equity where sometimes they wouldn't feel as comfortable in learning about these things in a whole classroom situation. So I think it is those old decency skills. And you talked about the digital side of it. Digital now is as important as maths and English for us. Like, it is definitely the third skill. And
The only difference with it, in my view, is that it requires improvements throughout your life in a way that maybe English and maths doesn't require. You can, when you get those skills, you can sort of be set up. We can't ignore digital skills throughout our working lives because, as AI has proven, all of this stuff changes.
you're right. And I have to tell you, this, at the moment, and I don't know how long it's going to be the case for, but at the moment, the most important skill we find we're developing is what we call prompting, is how to ask the AI questions. Because if you just put the question in as you've been given it, you get an answer. But if you put the question in to answer this as an expert in such and such, or ask it from Shakespeare's point of view, or ask it from so-and-so's point of view, you can get all those nuances and all those flavours and all those better quality answers. And that is the skill which we are really consciously trying to drum into our teachers and then into the students, because you just put in the straight question and you get a straight answer. But the better the question, the better the prompting, the better the outcome.
And you mentioned as well the idea of creating an AI likeness to yourself, and students not being able to know that. What kind of skills do you think are involved in being able to assess the authenticity of a piece of information or some content?
Listen, you may know I've got a person called Scott Hayden who is really into this. He's legend, absolute legend. The first time he did it, he got me, and he got me speaking in German, in Czech, in Polish, in Spanish, by putting it through a translator. And people who knew me believed it was me speaking those languages. They absolutely believed me. And so that was one level. But then he got me to just read a really short sentence, I approve, blah, blah, blah. And he got this fake avatar just saying all sorts of things. And it was a complete fake. And only people who really knew me said, oh, actually, Anthony, they speak with a little bit better diction than you do. So, but if you didn't know me, the lip syncing, the mannerisms, it was impossible to tell. So what we're trying to teach people to do, as they did in Taiwan, as they are there, is almost, as Scott says, inoculating them by letting them see fakes so as they can learn that they almost have to question everything which is put in front of them. And then triangulate it against other information, because the quality of fakes now is just improving and improving and improving at an exponential level.
No, fantastic. And I'm also interested, Josh, in the whole college project you mentioned. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, is this was, again, using AI captioning to make sure, and translating software to make sure that students who don't have English as their first language could still access the content. So there's a real point there that these students have these skills, they're being held back because of language barriers. Do we need to as well think about making sure that there are ways that we can supplement and make sure that AI isn't replacing certain skills, or are there some cases where it is reasonable for AI to take on board certain skills so that students can focus on perhaps higher level skills?
Yeah, so I think the ESOL project there, AI Translator at Hull College, shows some very interesting things. The first thing it shows is that AI can allow you to more effectively teach a range of different students with a range of different languages, the ESOL classes. What it also does, much more profoundly, is it allows you to teach other subjects at the same time that students are going through their ESOL qualifications, which allows for much better retention because learners are learning what they actually want to learn, not just the ESOL qualification. They're learning the nursing, they're doing the nursing course or whatever it might be alongside it, which supports retention. And I forget the exact figures, but it's somewhere around a 6% retention rate moving to a 90% retention rate. It's really quite astonishing. But it also breaks down barriers within the class. Because you can use these technologies to communicate within the class and with your classmates, what you get is friendship groups blossoming that are independent of language groups. So you have people who previously could not communicate with one another being able to communicate with one another in really profound ways. And what that does also to support retention is absolutely enormous. And I think, there's lots of ways in which AI might be supplementing or replacing different roles, but its capacity to help us understand and make sense of a world that's incredibly complicated is enormous. And we've started funding in the last few months some very interesting projects, still very early stages, that look at how AI might be used to make sense of things that we have no hope of making sense of as individuals, things like the labour market and where jobs might be and what career path you might follow. AI there, where we have no capacity as individuals to make sense of an enormously complex world, can do that work for us and leave the meaningful personal bit to ourselves, where we can make decisions about our own lives more effectively.
I have to agree with all of that, Josh. I would say in the actual college and in the classroom, there are definitely functions which AI will replace teachers for. And I'm not talking the important parts. There's what I call the donkey work, like writing a load of tests out, marking a load of multiple choice tests. There's lots of mundane things which just eat into teachers' time, which can be replaced by AI. The really interesting debate in my mind is when you start using AI to give feedback and to mark work, and that's a whole really interesting contentious area because there's a whole load of biases in AI. But I know we've been piloting it and we've actually found that what AI can do is identify the bias in the marker, because the marker, knowing that person, is more generous sometimes with the mark, whereas the AI isn't. So it's a really, really interesting thing. And the one thing we do have to be wary of with all of these things is complacency, because the fear will be people start using AI to mark work, they don't really mark it, and they just trust the AI completely to do it. And then we'll end up in this glorious circle of AI marking work which has been done by AI, and what has the student actually done? So I think with assessment in the future, we're going to have to look far more at Vivas, of project work, of actual conversations with students, rather than written work, because written work really is defunct now as a medium for assessing students.
It was discussed in the session earlier today that on the podcast earlier today that the way that we are assessing our students will change enormously, and AI is going to play a massive part in that, alongside a range of other technologies that allow us to capture video and test people's practical skills in new and interesting ways. AI is going to be transformative because it not only allows you to test things differently, but as you've said, Anthony, it fundamentally changes what is relevant as a question to assess. And to your point about some of those biases that might come in, I know Anne-Marie's keynote at AoC conference earlier today, talking about those biases within technology more broadly, it comes back to that point you were making earlier about critical thinking and really thinking about not only what is being presented to you, is this real, is this what it says it is, but also who made this, why did they make it, and how might it be impacting the way I'm seeing the world.
No, that's really interesting. I really like the fact that you brought assessment into the conversation, because obviously part of what assessment is not the whole purpose, but part of it is to give credentials that will be in demand by the workplace. If you had just, give one example of ways in which you think assessment will change to make it more authentic and make it so that students are more work ready, more representative of the kind of skills they need to demonstrate in the work.
I imagine that virtual reality assessment will become a thing, where you actually go into a virtual environment and you have to actually manipulate that virtual environment to show that you know what you're actually doing. I can imagine that very, very much happening as I can, as I said, video. Although even with video now, they can make such deep fakes of a video. I'm not sure that that's going to really work in the future. So I can imagine where there's got to be a human interaction and even the videotaping of a conversation between people. So, but the VR analysis, and I've seen some tools which are out there where you can be dismantling a nuclear power reactor or something,
Oh, yes.
but actually do it in a safe environment, but you have to get the things in the right sequence or else it goes wrong.
I don't know about nuclear power reactors. I did have a go with changing a tyre in VR, and that was challenging. For me, hoping that students and learners, parents, teachers and employers get a deeper understanding of the skills people have and how they can relate to the world would be my hope for assessment. That when you take a test, when you are looking at a potential qualification, you can understand more deeply where that qualification might lead, what jobs it might open up, what other courses it might open up, and what skills you'll gain from it in a much more authentic and interesting way that can hopefully be more relevant to people's working and everyday lives.
I'll just finish by saying the challenge I've got is the skills which are most important, the empathy, the communication, the creativity. I just do not know, even using AI, how you actually assess those human skills. They are the ones which are most important, and I don't know.
It's sort of one of those you know it when you see it type things, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd just like to finish off. We're coming towards the close of it. But one of the things that people often talk about in the context of artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence in the workplace is this idea of there being just a much greater and more consistent rate of change. Things are going to be changing a lot. The skills needed are going to be changing. So there's going to be a huge demand to upskill people continuously throughout their lives. And I'd like you just to give us a sort of sense of your ideas of what AI can do to help us cope with that change and thrive under that change. But more broadly, what the sector, the FE sector and its partners can do to support students to thrive in that context of change.
The change is going to affect every industry we can imagine, from financial, engineering, media. We've got fake Instagram people now who look perfect, who aren't real, and they've got millions of followers. So everything is going to be changed by that. What we need to do is to make sure that our young learners and our returning learners or adults are comfortable, they're safe, they understand how to use it, and more than anything, how to be receptive to the new technology coming in, because ChatGPT is 2 years now, and it's changed completely the way we think about everything. And as Anne-Marie said this morning, that in 2 years' time there'll be something else. 2 years ago it was blockchain. It'll be something else, and so things are going to change. It's about being receptive to those things, and it's about us making sure our learners, both young and old, are able to cope with the change and the rate of change.
I entirely agree with what you said there, Anthony, and I think the only piece that I would add would be to make sure that the broader skill system is able to adapt to that change. That the pace of change is not going anywhere. It's continual and will always be a part of our lives. Making sure that the skill system in every part, whether it's assessment of qualifications, funding, or the structure of colleges and tertiary education more broadly, is able to adapt to that changing world, and that we're able to get as many adults learning throughout their lives, because that's so critical, but also make sure that those school leavers as well are getting the skills that they need to thrive in work.
Yeah. And if we're lucky, that AI is going to allow us to have that continuous learning, personalised tuition. So it should be something which really lubricates and supports all of that.
Entirely.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you, Josh. It's been a really exciting conversation. And thank you for those listening, wherever you are.